What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So Riot has confirmed that tanks are going to be the very next class update, and we know for a fact that the tank update is going to be launching during the mid-season, but we haven't necessarily had that much specific information about the actual direction that they're going to go with each of the individual champions they're going to cover until now. And that has changed, of course, with Riot Solo Crushed sharing some information about Sejuani that's given us a really good idea of exactly what we can expect to change with Sejuani as a part of the upcoming tank update. So today we're going over some of the issues with tanks, how they tie in with Sejuani, and as well what her future rework is going to look like. This video is sponsored by RapidX Gaming Chairs. We're doing a giveaway with them where we'll be giving away a free chair and a ton of other stuff as well, and it's super easy to enter. All you have to do is just check the Gleam link in the description below, and the winners are going to be announced later on Twitter. So let's start by going over the core focus of the tank update really quickly, because we definitely should touch on it since it explains a lot of the goals of what's going on with Sejuani. So Riot have locked down 3 main goals overall for the tanks. Although they aren't necessarily the same for every tank, it's a good generalization of the rework as a whole. So first up, they want to give tanks more skill expression, which essentially means that they should have more interesting mechanical decisions to make, and there should be more opportunities to counter those things for players on the enemy team. This also means increasing the skill ceiling on tanks, because right now once you have the basics down, you're kind of at the limit when it comes to improving with the tank champion mechanically. Giving them new mechanics should reward players that, keep dedicating a lot of time to learning a tank champion, so you can actually get a good feeling like you're going to be mastering that champion now. The next point to hit on is that tanks are actually dealing too much reliable damage in a fight. We've seen this in the form of what is, a tank meta essentially, where all sorts of tanks that deal huge base damage, where the huge base damage of tanks means that they get to deal pretty big damage while still building pure tank items, as a result turning them into raid bosses and just making them super difficult to deal with. Tanks are supposed to be picked for their defensive and crowd control abilities, so it's safe to assume that tanks are going to lose out quite a bit on the damage that they used to have, but they will also be set apart from their offensive counterparts, and you can actually start behaving like actual tanks. And the last thing they're looking for to improve upon is uniqueness, which has definitely been a big part of every rework so far, honestly. So they have what they call Vanguards, which are the initiating tanks of League of Legends, the guys that kind of, run in, do some crowd control, initiators essentially. And right now, a lot of the Vanguards in League of Legends are extremely similar to one another in terms of the role that they actually play in the game, and it's likely that this is going to change, although it's also likely that their non-initiating abilities are going to be the focal point for these changes, since, making significant changes to their abilities that help them initiate kind of does a lot to change the class identity a bit. So with that, let's focus on Sejuani's issues in particular, and what Riot can definitely do to address them. Now, it's not exactly a case of potential of archetype for Sejuani. She doesn't have necessarily that much room for improvement on that case, but she definitely does have quite a cool thematic fantasy. Her background's kind of that of like a barbarian war chief. She rides on a boar, swings around this big ass weapon, which is actually pretty damn cool, but only one of her abilities actually does anything that interacts with her boar, and nothing to do with her gameplay reflects the fact that she's this big war leader. She should be boosting the morale of her army, not trying to do everything all by herself. Now, the fixes Riot are planning for this issue are actually pretty simple, because it's really just a case of giving her better abilities that tie into her theme a lot more, which means that she's likely going to become a lot more mobile, and as well be ready to rush into a fight thanks to her trusty boar, and Riot has confirmed that there will be moments where Sejuani feels like she is leading and inspiring her allies. And there's a few cool ways to do this. For example, Riot could implement something like the old Captain Boots enchantment on her Q, so that after Sejuani charges forward, her team gains something like maybe some bonus movement speed if they follow her into the fight. This could also give teams with Sejuani a little bit extra value when she's used to initiate the actual team fight, while not really affecting anything if Sejuani's trying to do everything by herself. I guess another big problem with Sejuani is that she's picked pretty exclusively for her ultimate, or at least a very significant portion of her actual power is on her ultimate. And right now, Glacial Prison's up there is definitely one of the most powerful abilities in the game for sure, but at the same time, that's actually kind of a bad thing because it does take up a lot of her power budget, which results in the rest of Sejuani's kit being a little bit lackluster. There's only so much power that Riot can put on a champion, kind of like how Blitzcrank can't really have a strong ultimate because his Q does so much, whereas at the same time Sejuani's power is a lot weighted heavily on her ultimate, as a result leaves the rest of her abilities fairly weak. Now that does sound a lot like Riot is just saying that they're going to nerf her ultimate, but if that means she can become a more interesting champion through her basic abilities, that's probably for the best. Keep in mind that Sejuani is a Vanguard champion, so she needs a way to initiate a fight and help lock people down, which means she's definitely keeping some version of her Q gap closer, she's definitely keeping some form of crowd control on her ultimate as well. It will maybe just be less obnoxious and require Sejuani to use some of the other tools at her disposal, rather than just relying on landing an awesome ultimate every teamfight. This does also tie pretty well in with our last point about Sejuani not necessarily acting like a war chief. If she's going to lose power on her ultimate, then Riot does need to shift some of that power elsewhere. And Riot has actually mentioned that they don't want to give Sejuani, this big one catch-all buff to her allies in order to help get the war leader feeling going. Instead, she's going to have the ability to benefit specific allies in ways that help aid her fantasy as a barbarian, which means that it's probably going to be some kind of really specific interaction that maybe only specific champions can use, maybe something that buffs AD carries, or maybe something that buffs mages, or changes depending on the actual champion itself. Hopefully Riot has some really cool ideas with that. I'm definitely excited to see that ability come to life. Now, probably one of Riot's biggest issues with Sejuani lines up really well with actually one of the major goals of the tank update as a whole, and it's what I would say is probably the biggest reason why Sejuani is going to be one of the big reworks in the tank update, and that's that she just isn't really all that interesting to play, honestly. And that's especially the case with Sejuani, with Riot describing one of her abilities as essentially just a glorified Sunfire Cape. It's not that Sunfire Cape's a bad item, but all this, kind of ambient AoE damage is just a big weakness in terms of interesting gameplay, exciting gameplay for a lot of these tank champions. For Sejuani, that probably means Flail of the Northern Winds is going to be removed or very significantly changed to something that's a lot more interesting to play with, and the same will probably go for other champions like Amumu, to be honest, with his Despair ability, I guess. There's just no need for this kind of passive ambient AoE damage on tanks. Tanks aren't there to deal damage, they're there to be tanky and give utility to their teams, and at the same time, those abilities tend to be a lot more boring and less exciting to play with, at least. Maybe it's a little bit ambitious to guess that all of these abilities are going to get removed, but if Riot want to refocus the tank class and make them more interesting to play, it's definitely going to be a good place to start, and removing Flail of the Northern Winds is going to open up a huge space in Sejuani's design that's also going to give Riot an easy way to make her a lot more interesting champion to play. Taking power away from her ultimate as well means that they want her basic abilities to be more engaging and actually have some kind of mastery curve attached to them. Although she'll definitely be losing out on some damage compared to her current state, they want her abilities to remain impactful as well, which probably means potentially more crowd control or more utility for her trouble, making her even deadlier than before as long as she picks her engagements correctly and coordinates with her team. Now, something we haven't mentioned so far is going to be her passive, which Riot have also confirmed is pretty much guaranteed to change. So right now, Frost Armor isn't actually, it's not all that bad. It does increase her armor, increases her slow resistance, which is a very tank-specific passive, but there's two big issues with it right now. Firstly, it's activated by Sejuani dealing damage, which doesn't really make sense on a tank. An ability that's activated by dealing damage is kind of clunky, and a lot of times it's difficult to mess around with. Next, it's also the fact that it's yet another ice-themed ability. When you think about Sejuani, you think about this epic barbarian chief riding on a boar with ice-related powers on the side because of her Freljordian origin. Her theme right now really focuses a lot on these ice powers and not so much on the barbarian chief and the boar parts, which is really where the focus should be. She's just kind of this big hulking dude that runs around with ice powers. So Riot's definitely likely to cut down on the ice focus quite a lot, just to make more space for the rest of her fantasy, the rest of her character design to come out, and allow her backstory to be a much more significant part of her actual gameplay. Now, Riot have said that all tanks, Sejuani included of course, do need to put more focus on their defensive abilities rather than their ambient damage, which leads us to believe that her new passive is going to be some kind of interactive defensive mechanic, one that both Sejuani as well as her enemies can probably play around. So a good example of an ability like this is maybe Malphite's Granite Shield, an ability which gives him a shield that refreshes if not broken over a certain period of time. Malphite can plan his engagements around when his shield's up, as enemy players can try to poke it down before committing to an engagement, and there is a decent amount of interactivity with Malphite's passive. Now obviously Sejuani's passive is not going to be a copy-paste of Malphite's passive, of course, since they do need separate identities, but that's sort of like interactivity, but at the same time a very defensive focus, is definitely what I would expect to see on Sejuani's new passive. Either way though, that's just about going to be everything for today on Sejuani's upcoming rework. In the mid-season tank update, there's quite a lot of new information here that's really helped us understand what Riot has planned for her. So hopefully you guys found it interesting, and I'm definitely looking forward to the future rework of Sejuani. Either way, it looks like that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.